Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles.
So we began, remember last week, talking about B'nai Elim, Habal Adonai B'nai Elim, Habal Adonai Kavod Va'oz. And one of the things, I'm going to repeat where we ended, okay? Once again, what is B'nai Elim? Sons of the gods, literally. So my suggestion is that based upon other usages of the word B'nai, the meaning of it could mean members of a particular group who studied or practiced whatever that group was about. It is possible B'nai Elim refers to a cohort of heavenly beings who comprise part of Hashem's court. They may or not be angels. They may have a charge of divine power from Hashem in them, but they are not gods per se. As Siegel suggests, they are the audience that the speaker is addressing in order to put the fear of God into them and clarify that even though they are part of Hashem's court, they are not deities. Hashem is the one and only deity who created everything, can destroy everything, and restore everything, including them. So who the speaker is supposed to be, we do not know. It could be an archangel. The psalmist doesn't tell us. The message to us as readers of the psalm is very clear. Hashem was, is, and always will be the one and only God. Okay, so I think that's what this is about. But again, you can see that whole term is a kind of a vestige of the ancient polytheistic roots out of which the religion of Israel emerged. Okay, all right. Now, then it goes on, and now we're going to, again, one of the other things to keep in mind, just want to, again, to remind you of the significance of this psalm. God's name is mentioned 18 times in the 11 verses of this psalm, which is the most concentrated use of the name of God in the Bible. And again, if you think of this in terms of making an impression upon the B'nai Elim and putting them in their place, you got it. Okay, you'd say it's sort of like overkill, but that's the whole point. Okay. Habal Adonai kavod shemo hishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh. Okay, so ascribe to God, ascribe to the Lord the glory of His name. Bow down to the Lord in the majesty of holiness. Okay. So now, kavod, okay, and shame are very important names or words that are associated with God. Kavod Adonai is used frequently. It's the glory of God. Okay. So sometimes that word kavod can actually refer to an essence of God. So, for example, in Shmot, when the tabernacle goes up, when it goes up, Kavod Adonai fills the tabernacle. So that kavod there, it means it is an expression of the essence of the presence of God. Okay? Here, however, it clearly does not mean that. It's referring to more glory and honor of God, because it says Kavod Shemo, the glory and honor of God's name. Okay, so glory here is more of a descriptive than it is referring to the essence of God. But it can be both. The same is with the word shame, right? Shame can be the name of God, yes, and it can be. Okay? However, as it really is, it could be here, right, referring to the name of God, a name that has glory associated with it. But the fact is, shame can also be something that expresses the essence of God, because, or is a surrogate, if you will, for God's presence. Because in Deuteronomy, it's clear, starting in chapter 12, that God's presence, the kavod, right, the Aish, or just Hashem, the name, I mean, the presence itself. In Deuteronomy, God is upstairs in heaven. God does not come down to earth in Deuteronomy. What is it that God places in the tabernacle? Remember, in Shemot it says, I will be in that tabernacle. Build me a house and I shall dwell in it. Right? God says. Yes? All right, but here it says explicitly, I will cause my name to be in the tabernacle. That's what it's, I'm quoting. That's what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 12. I will cause my name to be there. Now you got to keep in mind that name, the concept of a name as embodying some kind of amazing power is quite extensive in ancient lore. Okay? The name itself has power. Think of the Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash, what? Shemei Rabbah. Magnified and glorified is the name, the great name, right? So we're glorifying the name because the name conveys the essence of God. So it's these terms can be, you see how these words in Hebrew have multiple nuances to them, and that's why it's when you want to get into the wording, you've got to look at a dictionary, a good lexicon, or a concordance. Later on, there's a word that pops up later. I was having a deuce of a time trying to figure out what the root was because I wanted to understand how it could mean something when it seemed none of the normal usages of it were found. Finally, I went into a different dictionary where they broke it down differently. I found the root of the word. I then went back into the Curler-Baumgartner, and there it was. Okay, but because the nuances associated with these Hebrew letters put together in a word, it's mind-boggling. That's a challenge. I see your hand, Tybal. And when you look at Midrash, that's why you can see the same verse interpreted in Midrash in different ways, because they're pulling different rabbis or different groups of rabbis are pulling at different nuances of the same word. And they're all right. I mean, if you look at the uses in the Bible, which you can see when you have these books that refer to multiple usages, you'll see that it's unbelievable the degree to which these terms get interpreted and reinterpreted. I'm supposing all of this is a result of the fact that you're dealing with a language that is over 3,000 years old. And you're dealing only with the biblical period. You're talking about a period of about 1,000 years. And over the course of 1,000 years, right, when you consider that you have different cultural centers between the North and the South, yes, you're going to find different nuances attached to the same word. Sometimes you can figure out the common denominator, but sometimes it's hard. And I'm sure other ancient languages have the same issue, but I'm not a linguist. I'm thinking that perhaps, ancient Greek, ancient Egyptian, people who know those things probably see this similar stuff. I know, look, even in English, right? You can think about it. Go look at the Oxford English Dictionary. Look at how the meanings, the nuances of words, just in terms of the, English from England, relatively young language, so to speak, but there it is. Okay. All right. Tybal and then Barbara.
So, usually I've heard rabbis talk about the name of God most closely associated with the tabernacle is the Shekhinah, or the presence. So is there a connection between Shem as an essence and Shekhinah?
No. Shekhinah comes from the Hebrew root shachan, which means to dwell. So Shekhinah, which is a rabbinic term, not a biblical term, it's an expansion of what it says. Build me a bayit, and I will v'shachanti, right there in Exodus. Okay, build me a house, v'shachanti b'tocham, and I will dwell in their house, in their midst. No, so there's no connection between the two. No. Barbara.
What's the difference between a lexicon and a concordance?
A lexicon actually shows you the etymological development of a word and the multiplicity of meanings. A concordance lists the clause in which every single word in the Bible is found. It's done alphabetically based upon the roots of the words. Now, a concordance, the concordance that I use, which is a good concordance, also breaks it down by meaning. Okay, that doesn't necessarily, but that's meaning as it appears in the Tanakh itself. The people who put together the concordance may not have had exposure to ancient Near Eastern texts. They tend to be very pious Jews who focus, who focus correctly for concordance, but they may not necessarily have the advantage that a more secular type of student would have by looking at cognate words of a similar sound or similar meaning in other ancient languages. So concordance basic tells you where you can find every single word in all of its grammatical permutations in the Bible. So my concordance with tiny print, the most recent one published in Israel, is 4 big volumes long, multiple column. Okay? All right, so that's the answer. All right. Now, so the glory of God's name, majestic in, and the majesty of holiness. Again, holiness is also a very significant word, obviously, right? It can be the holiness of God, right? But holy is also relates to sacred items, to sacred acts. That's also very, very significant term. All right. By the way, those words also relate to different parts of the tabernacle. That's something else. We'll talk about that later. All right. So the next thing I'm here to tell you is that verses 1 and 2 constitute the first element of another inclusio. Our old friend, Mr. Inclusio, the frame. We have a frame here too, and the frame will be completed in verses 10 and 11 at the end. And here, what marks the frame is that each one of these verses contains two expressions of God's name. So you have two, right? And then you have 2 and 2 again at the end, which means 8 of the 18 expressions of Yud He Vav He in the Psalm are contained at the beginning and the end. Not all of the lines, most of the lines do not necessarily have 2 usages in each sentence. Okay, so that's the fact that it repeats, that structure is found in the first 2 verses and in the last 2 verses, tells us that we're framing this again, because what's inside is to be understood as a single powerful statement, even though it may contain different elements, which we saw very clearly in verse 19, where you have 3 different sections. But nonetheless, by putting it in a frame, you're basically saying, in fact, in point of fact, for all of the differences inside, this is one important statement. Okay, Rick.
Is inclusio Italian for framework?
Oh, it means an inclusion, to include.
Inclusion. Okay.
Yeah.
So that works for the top and the bottom? The bottom isn't exclusio?
Oh, no.
It's just
it's part of
the whole thing is inclusio.
It's part of the inclusion. Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you.
Latin,
It's like brackets.
If you say inclusio, you're thinking, oh my, I know what an inclusio is. You can go right.
Latin, okay.
Yeah.
Like brackets. Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right. Okay, so this psalm then establishes the theme that God, Hashem, as the one God, and again, Hashem, not Elohim, right? Hashem. I mean, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. That Yud-Heh Vav-Heh is the only God who's active in nature. Because as we're going to see clearly, natural phenomena are a part of the psalm, right? It's obvious. I mean, you'll see powerful natural phenomena. So we're dealing here with divine power, and divine power that controls the power of our world. That's what this is saying. And it's a kind of a non-polemical debunking of paganism, because the paganism of the ancient Near East, especially in Canaanite religions, is very naturalistic, right? I mean, the various forces of nature were deified. That's common, right? It's common. But so this is by just totally over and over repeating Hashem, 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 with all these statements of power that we're going to see, is making that statement. There's only one power, period, end of discussion. The other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of what we're going to read, as I said before, are Baal associated powers, particularly the use of waters, particularly, you'll see how I mean that, particularly thunderstorms, earthquakes, things like that. All right, those are part of the descriptives of the god Baal. So we're not only seeing a debunking of general naturalistic paganism, but there's a specific god here that this psalm has in sights. And as I said last time, remember, a lot of people thought this was simply a reuse of so almost plagiarism of Canaanite poetry about Baal. In fact, it is not. You want to say repurposing, you can say that, repurposed in order to debunk Baal without being polemical. It's sort of highlighting the positive without mentioning the negative, in the hopes and in the understanding that the reader will get the message. Okay? All right. Now, the second significant element here that's going to begin now in verse 3 is the use of the word kol, kuf vav lamed, which means voice. Okay? It can mean sound, and we're going to hear it refers to sounds. Kol can mean a sound. It can be used, hark, kol, koreh bamidbar. Okay, hark, there's something calling in the wilderness. Okay, but when you say hark, what does it mean? Listen. So it's a statement associated with the presence of a sound. Okay, so kol is the voice of God, is going to be a very significant element here. Vered.
I have two remarks. One is the call that you mentioned is appearing here 7 times.
Yes.
In this Mizmor.
What we mentioned
so
that.
We want to say maybe a siman, maybe a sign for 7 days of the week. Maybe.
I would go extending that. You're right. 7 days of creation.
7 days of creation, yes.
Right.
Better say than 7 days of the week. The other remark is, generally speaking, about this Mizmor, is portraying God in a form that we see his power in very tangible, concrete things. I hear the water. I see the falling of the trees.
Yes.
I see his power, not which, the people wanted to see something that is indeed concrete rather than saying that God is powerful and he's above,
Right.
and we don't know where he is. And that, of course, is in relationship of descriptions of other idols like Baal in other religions that we know.
Right. Absolutely right. The Mishkan itself is a compromise, if you think about it, giving the people something concrete to see. But you're right. It's clear that one of the problems that the ancient Israelites had was adapting to the concept of an invisible deity, a non-material deity, a non-material deity. So you have to point to what Rambam would call not God's attributes more, but God's actions. How does the power manifest itself in the world around us? And that is, I think, to this day, a very viable way of helping people understand the presence of a non-material God. And you think about it also. I see your hand, Leon, just a second. If you think about it also, and let's talk about creation, okay? What is the most prominently used verb in Genesis chapter 1? What single verb appears?
Devar, isn't it devar?
Which word?
Devar for says?
Close, Amar.
Vayomer, yeah. I was gonna say.
Right. Amar, Aleph Memresh. Speak, says, God says. God says 10 times. Other words are used, there asa and particularly bara are used 7 and 6 times respectively. But Amar is 10 times. And that's the same point. How does God, what's the key process in God, how God creates? He speaks, right? Speech is a very good action for a non-material God because you can hear it, but you can't see it, right? And they didn't know from sound waves. They didn't understand there's a quasi-material thing happening as vibrations move through the air and hit our ears, right? It's not really material, right? It's not. But the point is, given the fact you can't see it and you can hear it, right? I mean, you can hear the sound of the wind, yes? You can hear the thunder, right, in a storm, right? You can't see the the molecular explosion, however, that's taking place in the cloud because of the lightning that causes the thunder. But as far as you're saying, my God is angry. Look what he's doing. Ooh, gee. Okay, so you're right. It says the power of God is expressed through nature, but it is not nature because God is beyond nature. Nature is physical. The God that rules it is the power that is beyond, that is behind all of nature. If you want to say that energizes nature, but God himself, non-material. Okay, Leon and then Tybal.
All right, I just wanted to bring up, Rashi is very nice on this, just fun. He gives a little story about Bilam, a Rasha. And he says the sound made the people, the idol worshippers come to him and say, what is happening? What is happening? Will God bring a flood upon the world? And he answers, no, of course not. He already swore that he would not bring a flood. Rather, the sound of stirring you heard is that the Holy One, blessed be He, is given Torah to His people. So yes. He combines this with the Re'amim and
right.
We just heard a couple of weeks ago.
Right. But the fact is, at Ma'amad Sinai, right, the people heard, according to plain meaning of Shemot, the people heard the 10 words. God spoke and the people heard, right? And at the end of chapter 20, they're so scared. They say, Moses, no. We can't take this. It's too overpowering. You get the words and you tell us. But God wanted to talk directly to the people.
But in this story, he says it's not just the Israelites that heard it. Even the guys with Bilam HaRasha heard it.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it reverberated throughout the world, you could say. Yeah, right. Powerful stuff, yes. Okay, Tybal.
So you started to go there, but I wanted to hear you on the synesthesia at Mount Sinai, where you use the term plain meaning, the people saw what is auditory and heard what is visual.
Oh, well, there's one instance where, yes, they say you saw the sound. They saw the sound of the shofar. Okay, right.
But isn't there also a heard, a visual? I thought it was two instances of synesthesia there.
It may be, but the point is, again, it's used. You can't generalize from that. I think the point that they're trying to make is that the phenomenon was so unique that it was as if you saw the sound. Because remember, the people, what it's trying to say in the various versions, that there are different versions in different subtleties. Those statements. Even within the Torah itself, are composites. I mean, I don't have time to break it down to you, but there are composites there. And the fact is that's okay, because once again, what the Torah is trying to impress upon us is that how God operates is not always clear to us to understand. Our senses can even get confused because of the power of this. And they're basically saying it's a noise. It was a sound and an expression of energy that was so powerful that you could actually see the voice. It seemed to be that way, so they wrote it down. Okay? I mean, I'm sure that's what's going on. But in general, the use of Amar, because it's used throughout the Bible, right? Or Vayadaber, which you said before, Vayadaber. Those terms, again, it's a speaking God. And God can speak and things happen, right? God said, I'll provide you with manna. It'll be there. And bread, and meat. You're going to get my version of bread, from these plants or whatever. It doesn't say that, but I mean, probably some kind of a plant. They were vegans, right? Plant-based food. But the fact is, in the context of the miraculous expression, no, it was something that literally came from heaven. God said it would be there, and it was there. Did you see him make it? No, but there it was. Okay? And similarly, God said, I'm going to send you quail to eat. Sure enough, there they were. Okay? So, I mean, and God speaks, and these things happen. Plain and simple. Okay, so in that sense, you're seeing his voice, the results of his voice. But I think the mystery that develops in the process of expressing these things is intentional, because that's the whole point. It is a mystery. I say that over and over again because the Bible struggles to put into concrete terms things that a non-material deity leaves in concrete, amorphous. What can you do? Okay. All right. Moving along. Okay. Now, Call Adonai. Now we're going to begin with the voice. Call Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim Adonai al mayim rabim. The voice of Adonai is above the water. Okay. The voice, now here, the kavod, it's interesting, the kavod is thundering. That's what it says. El HaKavod, the God of Kavod, right? The God of the Kavod is thundering. The God of the Kavod, right? It's as if the Kavod is the thing. It's an entity, an extension, if you will, of God. Sadia Gaon, 900, Iraq, Bavel. Sadia says that when the Israelites spoke, God's voice was broadcast on Sinai through the kavod. He calls it kavod nivra, which means a created kavod. It's not the amorphous kavod that is God. This is a sub-God, a product of God's creation called the created kavod, which is the microphone, no, the speaker through which God's voice is amplified. Okay? It's the PA system of God. So that's Sadia. And this is the verse. El HaKavod Hirim. Right? That thunder, that noise, everything came out of the kavod. Okay? Here it probably means, again, this God expression, because the kavod, remember, the kavod came down on the mountain. So God was here is presented as a kavod. Okay? It's a divine powerhouse of glory. And that's where the voice came, that's where the thunder came from. And that ultimately is going to be, according to the understanding here, what the people are going to hear. And then it goes back to Adonai al Mayim Rabim. Now, this is not necessarily talking, by the way, hold on, I'm confusing you. This is not, I'm sorry, I confused myself. This is not talking about Sinai. This is talking about the creation. All right, that's what this is talking about, the water. Okay. But what Sadia, from another use later on, extracts from this, right? Since it says here that God, with respect to what happened at Sinai, Sadia draws the conclusion that this is a created entity. Here, it may not be a created entity. Here, it may simply be this amazing voice, this amorphous voice. I'm sorry, I transposed that over here. So again, God's voice is above the waters. The glory God thundered. God is above multitudinous waters. Okay? All right. Now, what is that talking about? Where do we hear of such a situation with God above waters?
The Ruach Elohim Merachefet al Hamayim.
Right. Genesis.
Al Haaretz. Yeah.
No, al Hamayim. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
The soup of the beginning of creation, the undifferentiated soup, has water. Remember, there's darkness, water. It's actually deep water, Tehom, which in itself is a reference to a pagan deity. Deep water. And by the way, Baal defeats deep water. So right here you have another kind of a debunking of Baal, because God is over the water. God thundered over that water, okay? And God overwhelmed that water. That's what this is implying, going back to Genesis chapter 1. So the author of the Psalm knows Genesis chapter 1, okay? And Hirim, so the thunder is the powerful expression that allowed God to ultimately quiet down the waters and to literally do away with totally negate the power of the waters. And so that's why I think, here the JPS says mighty waters, Siegel says multitudinous waters, because Rabim, Rav can mean strong, but it can also mean multiple. And I think here I'm gonna go with Benji Siegel, because the point is they're not trying to indicate the power of water. They're not indicating that this water had any power of its own. Didn't have any power. God didn't give it any because it never had any in the first place. But it was the whole, because remember, the whole earth was covered with water. That's what this is talking about. It's not just a lake or an ocean or a sea. It was the entire world. And God, boom, controlled that with his voice. Okay? Yes. But here you get a sense of the thundering, because hirim, that verb, resh ayin men, is used frequently as ra'am, which is thunder. It's thunder. So here it says thunders. Both the JPS and Siegel agree. There's a thundering going on here. So that is one expression of the voice of God, a powerful one. Right? And again, that's a Baal reference as well. But here you wouldn't know that. All right. It's not nature making the noise here. It's God. All right, moving on. So this is here, the use now here, hirim, that verb, is used in Exodus chapter 19. All right? It says, Vayihi bayom hashlishi, on the third day, bihiyot haboker, when it was morning, vayi kolot ubrakim, ve'anan kaved al hahar. Okay? So there was kolot uvrakim. So, kolot, coals, plural, multiple. What's barak? Lightning. Barak is lightning. So what comes with lightning? Thunder.
Thunder.
Oh, here it's clear that Ra'am, right? That coal refers, can refer to thunder. And then it says, Anan Kaveh, this huge cloud is on the hill, on the mountain. But kol shofar is written, okay? That's the sound of the shofar. So here it's in a sense the voice of the shofar, but it means the sound of the shofar. So you have a variant on it, okay? Now, chazak, very strong. Now, vayecharad kol ha'am asher b'machaneh, and the people shook. All the people in the encampment shook. Now, why are they shaking? Okay, why are they shaking? Well, one answer could be because they're scared out of their wits, right? They are scared out of their wits. By the way, they're shaking. They're quaking. They're Quakers. They're Quakers. No joke. The term Quaker, I looked it up, came into use in around 1650. Some person in England called them Quakers, or maybe within the group, because they quake in the presence of the Word of God, because of their fear of the power of the Almighty. They quake. And today that term is used for Haredim. They quake. So we have our own Quakers. They shake. In other words, the whole point is they sense they're standing in the presence of this ominous power. And it's like this. Oh my God, he loves me, but my goodness, he scares me at the same time. Okay. So, we have our own Quakers. So next time you want to buy a cereal, what kind should you buy? Quaker Oats. Never mind. All right. Thunder and lightning and shaking. Okay. So God goes out and the people stay at the bottom of the mountain. Now we're finishing up. So Mount Sinai, Bahar Sinai, Ashan Kulot, all cloudy. Asher Yarad Alab Adonai Ba'esh. God came down in the fire. Ooh. Now, is God the fire? He's in the fire. Where do we know God is in the fire? Where else?
Burning bush, right?
Right, and where did the burning bush take place?
In the desert?
On Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai.
So this is God, by the way, it's called Har Elohim. You know that. Sinai has many names. Or Sinai, it's called the mountain of God, of Elohim, or the mountain of the gods. That's not unusual in the Middle East. Baal had a mountain in the north, right? In Greece, Mount Olympus, the mountain of the gods. Why? Because these are things that reach up into heaven. So if God's presence wants to come down to earth, he'll take the shortest route. Go to the top of a mountain. Makes perfectly good sense. You do the same, right? Especially if they're very tall mountains, right? Mount Sinai, the mountains in the Sinai Peninsula are not what you'd call Himalayas. Okay, look, I can look out my windows here, and on one side I can see Mount Baldy. Those are Takish mountains, right? They're 10, 11,000 feet. Then I see the other mountains here in the northwest part of the valley, right? And they're, 5,000 feet, baby mountains. And then you have the Santa Monica Mountains, which are Taka Peewee Mountains compared to these guys. So Mount Sinai, I don't know, about somewhere in there, not the biggies. That's all right. Remember the rabbis tell us, why did God pick Mount Sinai? Because it was the most humble of the mountains, right? To remind us that within God, when God's presence, we are to be humble like Sinai. And God will, because of our humility, give us Torah. Good lesson. Yes, be humble. All right. But then it says, Vayecharad kol hahar ma'od, and the mountain trembled violently. So yes, the people may have been shaking internally, but guess what, folks? They were also shaking externally because the mountain was shaking. This is a major natural phenomenon. Whew. Wow, can you imagine standing there? I don't think Cecil B. DeMille caught this fully. There's no way. He didn't have surround sound. Now today, if you have big screen, let's say you have it on the huge screen, right? And you have surround sound, you might get a sense of what that's like. Maybe.
Rabbi, could it have been an earthquake?
Aha. This is a good question. I will get to that answer shortly.
Okay.
It could be because, no, I don't know enough about the seismic history. I could have checked it. I didn't. Because we don't know where Mount Sinai is. That's the problem. We don't know. Now, what I should have done, actually, I just thought of, why didn't I think of this earlier? We'll see. I did check on some earthquake zones. I'll get to that. But it's possible that there are earthquake areas crisscrossing Sinai. And it's possible that Mount Sinai was in one of those areas. Now, if we could check the seismic records, and I don't know if they have seismic records going back this far, but if there are mountains, Taka mountains that exist that are in earthquake zones, it'll help us understand where Sinai may have been or was supposed to have been. But yes, it could be earthquake, but it could also be but you see again, there's nothing in their minds, it's possible that the sound of the voices, the power of the thunder, which is God's sound, shakes the mountain and is responsible for an earthquake simultaneously. It's all part of one phenomenon. Okay? All right. And the people were shaking too. Tybal.
So it doesn't come as a surprise. You don't buy St. Catherine's Monastery is really on Sinai.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Although there's things we'll see, in my tomorrow noon class, we will be talking eventually about some stuff that is very interesting vis-a-vis the flora, of the Sinai Peninsula. We'll get there. Something else completely. But there's some interesting stuff associated with Mount Sinai that we can talk about. All right. Excuse me. Okay. So here again, this powerful moment. Moving on. Okay. Now, continuing with the voice. Now we're going to look at verse 5. Kol Adonai shover arazim vayishaber Adonai et arzei halvanon. The voice of God, this powerful sound, smashes cedar trees. And God indeed smashes the cedar trees of Lebanon. Okay? Now, cedar trees, we know, were prime lumber back then. I don't know, sort of like redwood today. Okay, I don't know. I have not checked the structure of remnants, wooden remnants from biblical times. I don't know if there's any wood left over from biblical times. But the fact is, it was used for very important purposes. You know an example of a building, very important building in biblical times, that according to the record that we have, was built with cedar wood. What are we talking about? Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple, right? And it's not surprising that he brought in Hiram Melech Tzur, right, from Tyre, to help him build the temple. Where's Tyre? Lebanon, right? It's not right nearby, but it's not far. And Mount Lebanon is mentioned, we will see in a moment here. So this area, that area up there was they harvested cedar trees up there. But the point is, it's a very strong tree. So when God says he smashed, it doesn't say he breaks. It says, by Shaber, Adonai, Shaber, that's a PL form. It's a strong form. He smashes these powerful trees. Okay? Smashes. Now, we're going to move into earthquake land. By Archidame Kamo Egel. By the way, the structure here is very similar to the very beginning. The repetition of words here, Adonai, where it's as if there is a thought that is broken up by something and then a thought continues. We've seen this all along here, okay? And it's part of the structure, the style of the here. So, Kol Adonai shover arazim, vayishaber Adonai arzei. God, the voice of God breaks, there it's shover, which means breaks mountains. In fact, that's indeed God smashes the arzei halvanon. Right, he smashes these trees. So that kind of repetition, adding in something new in the second part. Okay, here too, Vayarkidem kamo egel, he makes them jump like calves. Well, but who's he talking about? Levanon v'Sirion, oh, the mountains, kamo ben ra'emin, like like young wild oxen. Okay, so he's now talking about God making mountains shake. So here we now come to the question. Is that what happened at Sinai? Was it an earthquake? Is that what this is talking about? And now I must tell you, my scientific research, well, I'll get to that in just a second, but I have done great research, sweating to find an answer here. But first we have to read the next verse. Okay. Now again, this is in the north, right? Think Baal, right? This is a mountain. These are mountains in the north. So by implication, if you pagans believe that Baal lives on a mountain, I guarantee you, God shook that mountain and shook Baal out of it. So forget about it, because Baal is nothing. Okay. But he starts with the mountains in the north. And you'll see where he ends up in a minute. But look at verse 7 again. Kol Adonai chotzev la'botesh. The voice of God, the sound of God, splits, literally, cuts flames of fire. What's he talking about? Well, that's lightning again, right? That accompanies the thunder. There's the voice. This is the lightning. But what does it mean, chotzev lahavodesh? A chatzav is a stone mason, a guy who cuts stones. When you take a metal implement and put it hard on and fast on a stone, what can you get? Sparks, right? That's what's going on. God is a stonemason who takes his invisible metal axe, slams it on the mountain, right? And that makes a spark, and there's thunder. Or slams it in the hill, whatever. The invisible. The point is, he's talking about flashes of lightning. And
It's like with the Ten Commandments, no?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Polotu brakim, thunder and lightning. That's what's happening here. Aish can mean not just fire, it can mean lightning. Because it has the same results. It hits something and then starts the fire. Right? And if it hits you, I guarantee you, you're going to feel it. Thank God it never hit me. People have survived lightning hit, but sometimes they don't. Okay. All right. So that's, again, this is thunder and lightning standing alone, but it's continuing the whole picture here. Now, is it possible? So what are Lebanon v'Sirion? Sirion is today's equivalent to Mount Hermon, right? In the Golan, right? Israelis go skiing on Mount Hermon. In fact, it's split. Part of it's Syrian, part of it is Israeli. And each has a communication center on it. I probably don't get much done because each one is probably trying to cancel out the other. I don't know, just joking. But the fact is, we know what that is. And Mahar Lebanon, there's a valley, and then closer to the ocean is Mount Lebanon, north, a little bit north and west of Hermon. They're both there. They are real. Okay. And it's probably somewhere in that area where the cedar trees were harvested. All right. And they get snow. We know, right? You know that they get snow. Okay. But the question is it possible that they could have earthquakes? And the answer to the question is yes, because, wait a minute, wrong. Top of the, here's a map. Okay. You see the Jordan River Rift? This is the Jordan, and this is called the Arava Rift. It's that's a fault right down there from basically Syria, Iraq, up here, all the way down to the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea into Egypt. And it's an active fault. We know about it. I'll give you some more information in a minute. There's no question about it. It's a major fault zone. But there's a lot of little spin-offs of it. So this is literally, part of it in the north. Okay, you see that? So this area, these are faults. I mean, I made them larger with my pen. This is the fault zone. Can you see it? Everybody see it?
Yes. And you wrote a date there, sir, the 749. There's an earthquake at a certain date.
No. That's something else. I'll get to that in a minute. Don't look at that. Don't jump ahead.
Okay. I won't look at it.
All right. All right. So here you have Lebanon. Here you have Hermon. And clearly they are in the middle of fault zones. So it is indeed very possible that in that area they feel earthquakes, and it makes the mountain shake to one degree or another. And so this is not Bubba Mises. In a sense, it's real. Okay? All right. Now, 749. You see where this is CE. This is Middle Ages. You see the area that I marked with the X on the river? The big X right there? Okay. In 749 CE, there was a huge 7.0 earthquake right there. Okay. And it wreaked havoc all over the area. Israel, Syria, West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, all got hit. Have you ever been to Beit Shan? Okay. It's a city. It has got the most, in Eretz Israel, the most fully developed city you can see. You can walk down the streets. You can see where the buildings fell over. You can see all kinds of things. I even took a group there and I showed them how a statement's the understanding of different kinds of areas of zones of areas in a city, private property, middling property, public property, etc. If you just look at how these buildings were built, you see it right there. What's the private zone? What's the middling zone? What's the public zone? It's all laid out in front of you. Okay? That's in terms of transferring things on Shabbat. Okay? That's a very technical thing. We're not going to study that now. All right. However, if you look at what's there, everything that fell over is all lying in the same direction. What direction? The way the earthquake moved, where those earthquake waves underground shook it. And they all went boom, and this beautiful city suddenly was knocked over. Before that, it was standing. You could walk through it like you walk through, if you go to the Acropolis and look and see, standing. Then suddenly it was over. There's places all over in that area that fell. There are records of other towns, other places. And many of the Arab builders who were there, because they controlled that area then already, they repurposed pillars from these fallen areas into new buildings. Literally, they didn't care about, archaeology. Here are pre-made pillars, guys, just what we're looking for. So they schlepped it over. This king would build himself a palace, and they used, that goes on throughout the world that way. It's nothing new. Nothing new. That's you call it repurposing again, right? Makes sense. Anyway, so that fault, same fault. Okay? So yes, this is real. This is not some author's exaggeration. I remember when Avi and Sharon were first married and they were living in an apartment in Tel Aviv, 6 o'clock in the morning, they're awakened by an earthquake, which was somewhere, east of Tel Aviv, either that fault or a sub-fault from it, but yeah. So Sharon, being from London, doesn't know from earthquakes. She jumps out of bed. She's going crazy. Avi's lying in there, half asleep. She says, "Get out of bed. What are we going to blah, 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 blah." She's totally lost her mind. Avi says, "Get back, get into bed, be quiet. Nothing's wrong." But it's an earthquake. Avi says, "So what? This is nothing." It was a 4 or 5. Who knows? But Avi's used to it. Nothing. But poor Sharon, oh my God. Ask her about it when you see her. She'll give you, it's a good laugh. Yeah. She calmed down afterwards, but it happens. It happens. It's going to happen more. All right.
Do they have any earthquake building laws over in Israel? If they
what?
The earthquake laws that we have about building here in California.
Yeah.
Do they have any similar laws for buildings nowadays in Israel?
Do they have? Yeah, sure.
To keep buildings safe, do they have laws for buildings? How they should be built?
Of course they do. Absolutely. I mean, they're in certain areas of the towns, in the Arab villages that were built, a long time ago.
Can't do anything. I know.
They're not, but they know how to build solid buildings. But yes, they have codes. Of course they do. When that happened, there was no major law. Nobody in Israel died. I don't think anybody in the area died. It wasn't that strong, but the damage was minimal. But look, in our day, thank God, they have not had a real big one. Okay, they didn't have a Northridge. Okay, Tybal.
I just looked fast and I saw something that said if there's another earthquake on that rift, 10,000 people around where Beit Shan was might die in Israel.
Possible.
I'm not saying it's a reputable source. That's just what came up first. So in other words, the rift is still active.
There are homes. Look, I don't know the degree to which they've retrofitted homes for earthquakes. That's a different question. They've done that here. They had to, But because there's a lot of villages, that, Arabs and some Jews live in too. Old areas where they have had homes and they don't want to move and so forth. And, a lot of old buildings in Israel, as you know. Okay, now moving on. Kol Adonai. All right, so here. Now we're switching geography. Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh. Again, this sort of repetition, adding something new. The voice of God causes wilderness to convulse. The wilderness has convulsion. Not an earthquake. Yes? Okay? The Lord convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The Lord convulses where's Kadesh? Kadesh is in the western part of the Negev. This is talking about what was an oasis. This is the place where Moses hits the rock the second time. And he and Aaron are prohibited into Eretz Yisrael. It was a major center. It was also a major cultic center because it was an oasis. And that's a place where merchants, as they traveled through the desert, that was a very important place for them. All right, so the question is, are there faults in that area? And once again, looking at the maps, what do we see? You see where Kadesh is? Within short distance of that, where that is. And that's just the border is just west of that, the Negev, of the Negev. So this is in Eretz Yisrael. Four faults. Four, you see them? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different faults. So don't tell me there's no earthquakes over there. Okay? So once again, we see that there's reason to assume that when the poet wrote this, he knew what he was talking about. But what is this telling us then? So this immense power of God is manifested most powerfully where? In Eretz Yisrael. So because basically you're starting at the top and going all the way down to the bottom of what was that Eretz Yisrael in biblical times, right? And that's where the power was concentrated. Of course it was. Now we know God is universal God, but it's natural in antiquity. Most often gods were associated with the specific area where they were worshipped. The diaspora ultimately, after the destruction of the first temple, was a validation of the universality of God, because that one already was hard history, right? When you read Ezekiel, he is there, okay? He is there, and he has a record of it. And we know from Persian documents that the Jews were there, that the Jews gave permission for them to come, that the Persians gave permission to the Jews to come back. What the book of Ezra has, the document in Aramaic that the king gave them, they have found an identical document, almost word for word, for the Babylonians, to go back to their temple cities. So the fact is, there were Jews in Babel who stayed there and experienced things. All right. And they were there and they continued to worship God. Because when you come back centuries later, guess what? They're still there. And that becomes the next major center of Judaism, sucking all the energy literally out of Eretz Yisrael and focusing it up there. Okay? So diaspora, all these people, so now they are in a foreign land. And then after the destruction of the temple, they're in Egypt also. And they're worshiping God in Egypt. They built synagogues down there. They even built a temple, a Treif temple. They built a temple. Some of the Jews down there built a temple. It's in the records, okay? It's no question. All right? And we know that they were offering prayers and possibly sacrifices near Aswan, where the Jews they were soldiers who were there on behalf of the Persian government protecting the southern border. Okay. All right. in what is today Aswan, that area, Svene, Elephantine, it's called. Okay. So, I mean, so you get the sense now that God is universal God. He can be found everywhere, if there was any question, right? Obviously, the stories of the Exodus and the experience in Egypt also validate that according to the Torah, because God was speaking to them in Sinai, which is not part of Eretz Israel. Yes? Yes, of course. It's where the Ten Commandments were given. In a sense, the fact that tradition exists validates the universality of God. He's everywhere. All right? But the fact is, yes. But still, and I don't know the dating of this psalm. Okay, I can't tell you. There are old traditions here. That creation story in Genesis chapter 1 is very sophisticated. It's probably relatively late. It could be 7th century or early 8th century. Low 700s. It could be. I would think that, because it clearly knows this psalm knows that tradition. And so that's probably when it was put together. But the point is, nonetheless, you still have this sense that there is a kind of a focal point to the power of the God. Where is the most poignant, the most powerful place in Eretz Israel? Obviously, Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem is the most powerful place. So it expands out from there. All right, now, continuing. Look at the word yachil, to convulse. All right, now look at the next verse. Kol Adonai Yecholei Ayalot. The voice of God causes the birth causes hinds to calve. In other words, female, come on.
Bovine?
No.
Deer?
Deer,
Goats?
thank you.
Goats? No. Oh, hi.
No. Deer. Yeah.
Ayal is a goat.
I was thinking
deer.
No, Ayala is a deer.
Yeah. I mean, there's elk. I was thinking elk only because my kids in Denver have elk in the backyard, live elks, not oaks, elks that pass through there. So I was thinking.
What line you on?
But that's not the thing. All right. No. So this is verse 9.
Perfect. Thank you.
Holel ayalot. It causes female deers to calve, to give birth to babies. That's unbelievable.
Nice.
The point, what is it compared to what is this telling us? The power of God is found where? In thunder and lightning and earthquakes.
Inside bodies.
But I have
an animal giving birth.
There is another explanation that ayalot is actually not an animal, a deer, female deer, but it's a name of a tree. And
yes.
it's related like to Elah, the name that is similar, kind of similar in writing, that it is a very, very big and robust tree, and that God is able to make those trees move and dance and go around.
Except Yecholel Chil Kayoleda. That's the point. It's the same verb. It's based on the same verb as convulsing in the previous connection. And but this is talking about literally the causing of a female deer to have a baby. I hear what you're saying. It's an interesting thing.
Have a baby before its time, if you want to go this way. So that's a miracle.
But the fact what it means is literally to have a baby where there are pangs of delivery. That's what's going on. The mother, like here, animals have the same thing. There's an experiencing of something when the baby is born. It's really talking about the voice is there. It's using the verb for convulsing and applying it here because what it is saying is the same power that causes the earth to shake can cause as delicate and as private and as infinitesimally small, the birth of a little baby to happen. And not a human baby even, created in the image of God, an animal, a delicate, think about a deer, very delicate animal. This delicate animal is giving birth to a delicate little baby. The same power that causes mountains to jump causes a baby to be born. That's what this is saying. And that astounds me. But then, on the other hand, look at the next line, and this sort of gives
validity to the idea that it's a tree, because they talk about forests.
Yes, it's possible, but he could also be making a play on the word ayalot, knowing that it can refer to a tree also, and he flips now to trees. That's why the trees are mentioned there. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, he may be making word plays here, because there is a similarity. There's no question. Okay. So but here this is interesting. He strips away all the greenery of a tree, which basically means he renders it impossible for the tree to reproduce. The tree then will not be able to drop seeds. It's not going to have any children. Okay, but it's the same power. I mean, this guy's brilliant. This poet is absolutely brilliant. That's my feeling about this. Okay, absolutely brilliant. Now there's going to be a radical switch. Suddenly, he switches. Uvehechalo kulo omer kavod. But in his heichal, everything shouts glory, glory, glory. First of all, I want to suggest heichal may have a sound association with cholel. Heichal, cholel, heichal, cholel. Okay, so he may be actually making a wordplay, but he's transitioning us now into something different. We're moving to the conclusion. But what's interesting here, which I did not mention and I will now, there's a subframe. Look at verse 9. There are 3 verbs. Holel, Yechesof, Omer. Right? 3 different clauses. Yes? You agree?
Yes.
One second. Look at verse 3. Kol Adonai al Hamayim, 1 segment. El HaKavod Hirim, 2 segment. Adonai al Mayim Rabim, 3 segments. Okay. This is verse 3 is the first appearance of the word kol. Verse 9 is the last appearance. Each of those sentences, as opposed to the others, has 3 segments, not 2. Got it? So I'm saying this is a frame within a frame. The use of the voice, which has been operative now from verse 3 through verse 9, is now over. In addition, we're transferring over to something new because, and I really believe now that Heichal was put there because of the sound with Cholel. I really think so. But it ends with Omer, but it's not, you see, it ends with Omer, with somebody saying something, but it's not God. It's someone or some things that are in the temple of God. Rick.
If I could also suggest, we have kavod and oz at the beginning, and everybody's shout. It's the congregation, I think, is shouting kavod there, and then oz is coming up in verse 11. So I think that's another framework, just by the vocabulary of it.
Hold on, wait. Let me just hold on.
Kavod va'oz in verse.
You're 1. Right. Verse 1 and it's part of the frame. Oz, yes.
Yeah. So
excellent. Yes, I forgot to note that. That is correct. Verse 1 has Oz, right.
So, and the kavod, it's like Baruch Adonai kavod, mim komo. It's like the Kedusha also. There's kavod in there. Baruch Adonai mim kavod. I don't know.
All right. Now, okay. So now we're going to focus on God's power minus the voice. All right. Now the use of the word heichal here is very interesting. Heichal can mean a palace. It can also mean a place inside of a temple. And so when you see that sound, one imagines one's mind jumps to Isaiah chapter 6, which depicts God in like a heavenly palace temple. Okay? It appears in both of these instances that we're not talking about a temple in Jerusalem. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a heichal, a palace, that we will see is also a temple. Okay? The point is, it says here that the sounds of praise of God are coming out of the heichal. So the heichal is inside. There were no sounds that came out of the temple in Jerusalem, as far as we know. All the sounds were them, their choirs, and their orchestras outside. It appears that the priestly activity inside was done in silence, because there's no reference to anything that they say. Okay, there's nothing. There's plenty of opportunity to talk. They talk about priests a lot, especially in Vayikra, and there's nothing associated with their worship. So my judgment, based upon that, I think this is talking about a heavenly palace temple. Okay, Leon.
Yeah, well, it just reminded me what we read every morning in the Shemona Esrei. Okay.
In where?
The Shemona Esrei. ככתוב על יד נביאך וקרא אל זה ואמר.
Exactly.
קדוש קדוש אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ לעומתם.
That's Isaiah 6. That's what I'm talking. We're going to get there. Yes. That's what I'm talking about. But I want to give you some details about what's before it. Listen to this. Excuse me. So, I'm reading now Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. We're going to go over tonight, guys. So be patient. Okay, because we started a quarter hour late. So I'm punishing you for my computer's failure. Sorry. I apologize on behalf of my computer. All right, here we go. Bishnat Moram El Uziyahu, King Uzziah died. So we're talking 742 or 739 BCE. And Isaiah, the prophet, is saying, Yeshayahu, Ve'erad Adonai Yoshev al Kisei Ram V'Nisa. I see God sitting on an exalted throne, a chair, a throne, a kisei. All right, V'shulav Meleim et ha'hechal. And the skirts of God's robe are filling the temple. As far as I know, this is the only time in the Bible where God's clothing is described. This is Isaiah. This is a vision. This is what he sees. So his robe, it's like some of the, when you see one of the royals got married, her train, like it looked like it slept on for 3 miles. There's this huge, long train that followed her when she got, as she was going up to be married. And this is the same. So this is this huge, long robe that extends out. Okay. All right. Now, then it goes on to say, Srafim nomdim mima allo shesh kanafim lechad b'shtayim yechaseh panav u'b'shtayim yechaseh raglav u'b'shtayim ye'ofet. So there are, now here again, this is not the temple. But Srafim, seraph angels, are standing above him, right? It's like a, crowning area. I see your hand, just a second, okay? They're above him. And it says how they have 6 wings. 2 of them cover their bodies, 2 of them cover their faces, and with 2 they fly. Okay, in Ezekiel's vision, they only have 4 wings. Okay. In Ezekiel's vision, however, they constitute the chariot upon which God rides. Here, that too is very interesting, but that's not in Jerusalem either. But here, different vision, the angels are up here, floating above. Okay. The karaza elzeh, and they cry out one to the other, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, below kol haaretz kvodo. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his kavod. Kavod. Therefore, kavod here now appears to be not an adjective defining, but rather an essence, a presence. God's presence literally fills the whole earth, because this is a palace up there, and the presence radiates down and fills the earth. Okay, Melissa, you froze.
Oh, really?
There
Can you hear me?
You're back. Okay,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. Yeah. When you said that the temple was, the priests in the temple were quiet, that they didn't make that there was no noise coming from the temple, and I just was thinking about on Yom Kippur when we kind of recreate the temple service, and there's certain things that are said, and are you saying nothing was? I don't know. That seemed to be at odds with. I thought there were certain words that the priest said.
The only thing that it says, and it's strange because the rabbis wrote this. It's not biblical.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rabbis interpreting it. But it says, when the people heard the holy name of God, they fell prostrate, right, in the courtyard. It's impossible. That's rabbinic imagination. Because by definition, the priests were not allowed to mention God's name in public. So I don't understand that. Nobody's ever explained that to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that if they heard, that's the only thing. But that was not routine ritual, right? That would only have been on Yom Kippur. That's an exception that proves the rule.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But the point is, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Why do we say Hashem? Do you know how to pronounce Yud Hey Vav Hey? I don't know how to pronounce it. No, but the pronunciation, it's possible that there was a period in time when people used it. It may be. And it may be that is a reflection on, at some point in the Second Temple period, that the people did it, or first temple. Maybe it's harking back to the first temple.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know. But the tradition has been, if it's the rabbinic tradition, don't say it. And here the rabbis, somebody in the rabbinic group wrote that poem, right? The Avoda service. But that's all that they heard. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is and then it says, this is the fourth verse. Vayanu amot hasapim mikol hakoreh v'habayit yimalesha, and the doorpost would shake at the sound of the one who called, and the house kept filling with smoke. What does this mean? The one who called, probably the one who called out for them to say Kadosh Kadosh, one of the angels, and the doorposts, of the house were shaking. So shaking again. Okay. All right. So this is a heichal. Okay. So a heichal, as I said, could mean palace. It could mean, it's used sometimes to mean the larger hall of the temple, the Kodesh, the holy place that leads to the Vir, the Holy of Holies. Okay. So it's not clear, but it is a term that's used with the temple. But in Isaiah's vision, it appears he's viewing a throne room in a heavenly palace. God sits on a throne, not the holy ark, right? The earthly throne. The seraphs hover over God. They don't constitute the throne as they do in the temple, right? The throne, the arms that are stretched out over the ark, as described in Exodus, is where the divine presence resided. That's where God lived. Okay. God's wearing a robe. We know the priests wore robes, right? Did God wear a robe? Does it have tzitzis? I know he put on tefillin, so the rabbis tell us. Okay, but maybe he had a talus too. I don't know.
They were very big tefillin.
Yeah. You mean God is Jewish?
God's Jewish, yes. Okay.
At least the Jewish God is Jewish.
Yes, yes. But he's the only God. Then he goes on. This is interesting, though. Isaiah is talking. One of the seraphs, one of those six, flew to me, biado, and in his hand was ritzpah b'mel kachayim, was a coal in thongs that he took from the mizbeach. So in the divine temple area, there was a mizbeach, and he took a coal, and with that he touched Isaiah's mouth, because Isaiah said, "I'm full of sin, I can't speak, for God." So they cleanse it. Now you can talk, no excuses. So he goes on, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So this is a vision of Isaiah. He's seeing this divine scene. He's hearing this. And out of this, he will envision an act that purifies him so he can express the words with which God fills him as the prophecies that he's going to share with the people. That's the whole point of this. Okay, so that's that temple. But now let's get back to the psalm. So their praising of God comes from within. Presumably, as we've said, he may have taken this image from Isaiah, which would put him around if this is the case, Isaiah is living around 740 to about 720. I'm sorry, 720 to about 680. 740 to 680, that range. Anyway, so it's very possible he's reading Isaiah. He saw this, and this is the whole point. That's what was happening. That's what came out of the temple. Okay, this kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Okay? All right, and he heard that. All right. But then it says, verse 10, Adonai lamabol yashav, right? God was sitting on a throne. So God sat at the flood on the throne, and God will sit forever on the throne. Why the flood? Why the flood? Well, remember, it began earlier. God is over the waters, right? So this is a whole thing where he's playing with the waters. Get it? God controls the waters. God could split the waters as he wished and make continents and, dry land and seas. Or he could open up all the waters and flood the world, right? Because God controls the waters. The flood. So I want to say this is harking back to when the earlier God talks about God being over the waters. But why Dafka the flood empowers him to sit on the throne? Because at this point, what it's saying is this validated the ultimate power of God to the Creator, to the creatures whom he created. The flood. It proved to the people that this God and the animals, that this God is ultimately powerful. God can create a world, he can destroy a world, and he can restore a world. That's it. And he is totally in charge. It's in a sense what happened when the first temple was destroyed and the people went up to Babel and came back. Polytheism in that group did not exist as far as we know. If there were any polytheists there, they converted to monotheism, because we do not hear of the issue of people worshiping idols in the prophets who came after the return of the exile. Archaeologically, they have not found evidence of idol worship in the areas where these returnees lived once they came back. It seems as if that horrific tragedy cleansed the people of their tendencies to idolatry. And this is like a foreshadowing of that. The flood did the same thing. except the people ultimately fell back into their ways. And there's a Tower of Babel afterwards, and then he points to the Israelites, and they screw up a little, Exodus from Egypt, rebellion in the desert. The whole point is after that, it takes a long time to learn the lessons. But the point is that this God was validated by the power that he had to express in purging the world of the evil at the time of the flood. And after this, that's it. And God will sit on that throne forever. Now, finally, the last verse. Okay. Adonai oz le'amo yitain Adonai yavarech et amo b'shalom. Right? May Adonai grant might to his people. May Adonai bless his people with peace. Okay. All right. So, again, oz, right? What Rick said. Repetition, framing, conclusion. Like Psalm 19, this is a plea to God. Psalm 19, and there are other psalms that end that way. The conclusion of a psalm with a plea to God is not unusual, because this is a recognition of divine power and at the same time a plea to God. Okay, what's the plea? Please, we praise you that you have power. That's what this psalm has done. Please, God, you have the strength that you can give to the people. Please, God, do so and bless us with peace. Because if we have strength, we will be able to live in peace. Your strength with us. Okay? 2 references to God's name here. Okay? 2 references to God's name in verse 10, the same as verses 1 and 2. Oz, right? End of psalm. Amazing psalm. Yep. From Melissa, did you have your hand up again? Or is it up there from before?
I'm sorry, I did not take it down.
Okay. Hold on. Okay. No, it's okay. Just wanted to make sure you didn't want to say anything. All right, Tybal and then Mike Harris.
So I heard I read the flood very differently than you just explained it, the flood and enthroning. To me, it's like when you say to children who are frightened of weather or bad guys or something, the house will keep you safe. Yes, there are things out there that could hurt you, but the house will keep you safe. The flood to me was a reminder of the covenant for all people that God wasn't going to do it again when it added the enthroned at the flood. But you see it more as the power of the possible destruction than the outcome that it won't happen again.
No, I don't. I think this is a general statement. I'm not saying that the issue of the destruction of the temple had anything directly to do to this, nor the other, nor this to that. I just said it sort of operated. What this is suggesting is the same kind of a process that took place, that the flood served the same kind of purpose. Sometimes a huge catastrophe shakes a people, and they suddenly start doing introspection. What happened? Why did this happen? Did we have anything to do about it? Let's make sure if we did that we don't do it again. That type of a thing. But this prayer is not a universal prayer. This is speaking to the people, right? It's only for Israel, right? So in the sense that, yes, what this is saying, similar to what you said, Bible, is yes, this God has tremendous power. And God can put us in a situation where we can live peacefully because he's got this great power. You can rely on it, okay? But what he's basically saying is, no, please, you have the capacity to do this. Now, please do it so that we can live in peace. I am making a plea to you, God. Do it now so we can live in peace, please. We believe you can do it. Show us. That's what I think is going on here. Okay? All right, Mike.
Yes. So I think the $64 question is why this psalm was included in the Siddur when we return the Torah scroll at the end of Torah service. And I've got a guess, but I don't know if that's
what's your guess?
My guess is that the basic theme of the psalm is the power of God's voice, and this shows the Torah is a written form of God's voice, and we should remember that it's powerful and we have to obey it.
Bingo. And how many times is it mentioned? 7. What day is Shabbat?
Seventh day.
7. But you're right. The voice of God resonates within the words of the Torah. And the mystics literally believe that each letter of the Torah contains an essence of divine power and holiness. Literally, physically, it's in there. So the spiritual element is within each letter. So they take, and therefore, if you will, the silent, the unheard, when we read it, and that's why the tradition is, whether you're a mystic or not, when you read Torah, you really should read it precisely, because you are the mouthpiece of God when you read the Torah. God is speaking through you. So you should express God. And this is something Rick Muller will appreciate. I think he had to go. But, oh, you're there. There you are.
I'm here.
Rick, right? When you read Torah, you have to feel that you are literally expressing to the people. You're the microphone. You're the broadcasting. You're the kavod nivra, right? The built glory through which the voice resonates. And since Shabbat, we read the Torah, a huge chunk of Torah relative to weekday, yes? Whether it's triennial or the whole thing, you're reading a gesunter piece of Torah here, right? And so, indeed, we focus on that. And that's why that psalm is read. Okay? All right. Shkoyach, good questions, as always. Good discussion. Thank you. We all learn from one another, and we shall continue to do so. And please God.
Thank you, Rebbe.
Psalm 34.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.